She didn't recognize me at first. That should have been my warning. I stood in the doorway of my son Michael's colonial in Wellesley, Massachusetts, the spring rain pattering against the covered porch behind me. Through the window, I could see my grandchildren, Sophie and Noah, sitting too quietly at the kitchen table, their small shoulders hunched over what looked like homework. Sophie's cardigan had a button missing. Noah's sneakers, visible under the table, were worn through at the toes. The door swung open. My daughter-in-law Jessica stood there in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her phone pressed to her ear, her eyes sliding past me like I was part of the furniture. "No, I can't talk now," she said into the phone, her voice clipped. "Some delivery guy is here." She lowered the phone and looked at me expectantly. "Yes, it's Walter," I said quietly. "Michael's father." Her eyes refocused, and something like annoyance flickered across her face. "Oh, Michael didn't mention you were coming." She stepped aside barely enough for me to enter, already turning away. "Michael's not home yet. He's showing a house in Newton. I'd called Michael 3 days ago to say I'd like to visit the grandkids. He'd said Tuesday afternoon would work fine. Today was Tuesday." "He knew I was coming," I said, stepping into the foyer. The chandelier overhead probably cost more than I'd earned in a month back when I was working. Fresh flowers orchids sat on the console table. Through the archway, I could see the living room. All cream and gray, everything matching, everything expensive. Everything except the children's corner, where a few worn toys sat in a basket that looked like it came from a different house entirely. Well, I didn't know. Jessica set her phone on the table with a deliberate click. "I have a conference call in 20 minutes. The kids need to finish their homework. Maybe you could come back this weekend." "I drove an hour and a half, Jessica. I'd like to see Sophie and Noah." She sighed, a sound that managed to convey both exhaustion and superiority. "Fine. 15 minutes, but they need to focus on their work." She raised her voice. "Sophie, Noah, your grandfather is here. Say hello, and then back to homework." Two small bodies materialized in the kitchen doorway. Sophie, 6 years old with Michael's dark eyes, gave me a cautious smile. Noah, 4, hung back behind his sister. "Hey there, sweetheart," I said, crouching down despite the protest in my knees. "How's my favorite first grader?" Sophie glanced at her mother before answering. "Good, Grandpa." "Just good? What about school? Still loving art class?" "Mom says I can't do art club anymore," Sophie said softly. "It costs too much." Jessica's heels clicked sharply against the hardwood. "Sophie, that's not. We've talked about this. Activities are expensive, and we have priorities." I looked up at Jessica, taking in the Cartier watch on her wrist, the Hermes bag on the chair, the new Tesla I'd glimpsed in the driveway next to Michael's BMW. Art club for a 6-year-old probably cost, what, $50 a month? "I could pay for it," I offered, straightening up. "That's not necessary," Jessica said, her voice cooler now. "We manage our own finances, Walter. We don't need charity." "It's not charity, it's a grandfather wanting to." I said no. She checked her watch. "Look, I really do have this call. The kids have work to do. Perhaps you could visit another time when Michael's actually here?" I glanced at Sophie and Noah. They'd already retreated back to the kitchen table, their small faces carefully blank. This was clearly a familiar script. "Sure," I said quietly. "I'll call Michael and set something up." "Great." Jessica was already opening the front door, phone in hand again. "Say goodbye, kids." Two small voices called out half-heartedly as I stepped back into the rain. I sat in my 15-year-old Honda Civic at the end of their cul-de-sac for a long time after that, watching the rain streak down the windshield. The house glowed with warm light. From the outside, it looked perfect. Inside, my grandchildren were learning to make themselves small. 3 days later, Michael called. "Dad, I'm so sorry about Tuesday. There was a mix-up with my schedule. You told me Tuesday was fine." A pause. Jessica said, "She didn't know you were coming." "I told you, Michael. You said it was fine." Another pause. Longer this time. My son had inherited his mother's gentle nature, her desire to keep peace. Sarah had been gone 4 years now, and I missed her fierceness, her unwillingness to let anyone diminish her or the people she loved. "Look, Dad, Jessica's under a lot of pressure at work. She just made senior associate at Crawford, Beckman, and Reed. It's a big deal. She's stressed. Crawford, Beckman, and Reed, one of Boston's top law firms. I knew it well. I understand stress, Michael. But Sophie said she can't do art club because it costs too much. You're both lawyers. You live in a $2 million house. That's between Jessica and me, Dad. We're handling it. Are you? Because Noah's shoes have holes in them. Dad. Michael's voice held a warning now. Please don't criticize how we're raising our kids. Jessica works incredibly hard. She just needs some support right now. I wanted to say that support shouldn't come at the expense of children. That marriage was supposed to be a partnership, not a dictatorship. That I'd raised him to stand up for what was right. Instead, I said, "Can I take the kids to the aquarium this weekend? Just me and them. I'll ask Jessica. You'll ask her if I can spend time with my own grandchildren? Dad, please." "Fine. Ask her." He called back 2 hours later. Jessica thought it would be disruptive to their routine. Maybe in a few weeks. I hung up and sat in the small apartment I'd moved to after Sarah died, looking out at the Charles River in the distance. The apartment was modest, 1 bedroom, outdated kitchen, furniture Sarah and I had bought 30 years ago. I'd downsized after she passed, sold the house in Lexington, given most of the money to Michael and his sister Jennifer, kept enough to live comfortably, but simply. I'd retired at 60 from the business I'd spent 40 years building, had my pension and savings, and wanted nothing more than to spend time with my grandchildren. But Jessica saw an old man in an old car living in an old apartment. She saw someone not worth her time. That should have been the end of it. I should have let it go, tried again in a few weeks, been patient. But then Michael called again a week later. "Dad, Jessica's firm is having a family day thing. Partners, associates, their families." Jessica thought maybe, well, she suggested you might want to come. Show the kids where their mom works. I heard the carefulness in his voice. The question under the question. She suggested it? She's trying, Dad. She knows Tuesday didn't go well. This is her extending an olive branch. I doubted that. But I wanted to see Sophie and Noah. When? This Saturday, 11 to 2. It's at the firm's offices downtown. I'll text you the address. I knew the address. I'd walked into that building every day for 33 years. The offices of Crawford, Beckman, and Reed occupied floors 40 through 45 of a glass tower in the financial district. I parked in the garage and took the elevator up with several other families, young associates, with kids in tow, everyone dressed business casual, everyone smiling the particular smile people wear when they're being evaluated by their superiors. The 44th floor reception area was all marble and mahogany, the firm's name blazing in brass letters behind the desk. They'd remodeled since my time. It looked good, expensive, impressive. Jessica stood near the windows with a cluster of other attorneys, Michael beside her. She'd positioned them perfectly framed by the Boston skyline. Casual but elegant, power couple, personified. Sophie and Noah stood nearby, looking uncomfortable in clothes that were nicer than what I'd seen them wear before. Jessica must have bought them new outfits for the occasion. I walked over. Sophie saw me first, and her face brightened before she remembered to control it. "Hi, Grandpa." "Hey, sweetheart." "Noah, looking sharp, buddy." Jessica turned, and for a moment, just a moment, I saw calculation in her eyes before the professional smile slid into place. "Walter, you made it." She air-kissed near my cheek. "Everyone, this is my father-in-law, Walter." She turned to her colleagues with a laugh that held just an edge of condescension. "He's retired, lives over in Cambridge now, drives an old Honda, very modest lifestyle." The attorneys smiled politely, already categorizing me. Retiree. Modest means not important. "What did you do before you retired, Walter?" one of them asked. The kind of question asked out of politeness rather than interest. "I worked in law," I said quietly. "Oh?" The attorney's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Were you a paralegal?" "Something like that." Jessica jumped in smoothly. "Walter's being humble. He ran a small practice, didn't you? Very local, community-focused. Nothing like corporate law, of course. She smiled at me, and there was something victorious in it. Very different from what we do here. Very different, I agreed. Dad specializes in contracts and small business law, Michael added, a note of defense in his voice. How nice, one of the female attorneys said. My uncle did something similar. Very rewarding work, I'm sure. Not as lucrative as what we do here, of course, but rewarding. Jessica's smile widened. Exactly. Not everyone needs to be driven by money. Some people are perfectly happy with a simpler life. Right, Walter? I looked at my son. Michael was staring at the floor. Sophie was watching her mother with an expression I couldn't quite read. Right, I said. Well, Jessica said brightly, let me show everyone around. The kids will love the conference rooms. We have a client meeting space on 45 with an incredible view. She started herding the group toward the elevators, already moving on, already dismissing me. I followed at the back of the group with Sophie and Noah. Sophie slipped her hand into mine. I'm glad you're here, Grandpa, she whispered. Me too, sweetheart. The tour was everything I expected. Jessica showed off the firm like it was hers personally, the law library, the litigation room with its screens and technology, the glass-walled conference rooms. She told stories about big cases, big clients, big wins. She positioned herself at the center of every story, always competent, always essential. We ended in the main conference room on 45, where a catered lunch was laid out. Jessica had positioned herself near the managing partner, Richard Crawford, third-generation Crawford, a man I'd hired fresh out of Harvard Law 33 years ago. I hung back with the kids, making sure they got food, listening to Jessica's voice carry across the room. The Thompson acquisition was particularly challenging. She was saying to a group that included Crawford, $20 million in contested assets. I managed to negotiate a settlement that saved the client $8 million in litigation costs. Impressive, someone said. Jessica's been one of our most valuable senior associates, Crawford said, and Jessica glowed. Michael stood beside her, nodding, supporting, playing his role. I was getting a sandwich for Noah when I heard Jessica's voice spike slightly. Oh, there's my father-in-law. Walter, come meet Mr. Crawford. She was waving me over. Not because she wanted me to meet him, because she wanted an audience. Because having the managing partner meet the modest retiree father-in-law would underscore her own success. Look how far I've come. Look how much better I am. I walked over slowly. Richard Crawford turned, extending his hand politely, his face arranged in the expression of someone about to make small talk with someone unimportant. Mr. Crawford, this is Walter. Richard's face changed. The polite mask dropped away, replaced by genuine shock, then something like panic. Walter, he said, his voice strange. I didn't realize you'd be here. Jessica blinked, her smile freezing. You know each other? Know each other? Richard let out a short laugh. Jessica, do you actually not know? Know what? Richard looked at me, then at Jessica, then back at me. Walter, does she really not know who you are? The room had gotten quieter. Other attorneys were turning, sensing something. I don't think she does, I said quietly. Know what? Jessica's voice had an edge now. He's my father-in-law. He's retired. He ran a small practice in. Jessica. Richard's voice was careful now. Walter didn't run a small practice. Walter founded this firm. The silence was absolute. What? Jessica's face had gone pale. Crawford, Beckman, and Reed, Richard said. Walter Beckman, Christine Reed, my grandfather, Edward Crawford. They founded this firm in 1972. Walter was the Beckman. He was the senior managing partner until he retired 5 years ago. I watched Jessica's face as she processed this. Watched the blood drain from her cheeks. Watched her eyes dart to me, to Richard, to the other attorneys who were now staring. But her voice cracked. He drives a Honda. He lives in Cambridge. He donated most of his money to charity after his wife died, Richard said quietly. Set up the Sarah Beckman Fellowship for Women in Law. Funds 5 full-ride scholarships a year. He kept enough to live on and gave the rest away. Richard turned to me. I didn't know you were related to Jessica. She goes by her maiden name at work. Yes, I said. I know. Walter. Richard's voice was formal now, uncomfortable. I need to speak with you. Privately. Could you come to my office? Of course. Jessica grabbed my arm as I started to turn away. Wait. You let me, I didn't know. I know you didn't, I said quietly. That was obvious. But why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell me? I looked at her hand on my arm, then at her face. Would it have changed anything? Would you have treated me differently if you'd known I had money or founded the firm? Would you have been kinder to me, to my grandchildren? She opened her mouth, closed it. That's what I thought, I said softly. Richard led me to his office, closed the door. The corner office, the one I'd occupied for 3 decades. They'd changed the furniture, but the view was the same. Boston spread out below us, the harbor glittering in the afternoon sun. Walter, I'm so sorry. If I'd known she was treating you... It's fine, Richard. It's not fine. He ran a hand through his hair. You're Walter Beckman. You built this firm. You mentored half the partners here. And she Christ, I heard her. Simple life. Not as lucrative. She was patronizing you. She didn't know. She should have been kind, regardless. Richard sat down heavily. Walter, there's something else. Something I need to tell you, and I don't know if I should, but given what just happened, I waited. We've been investigating irregularities in some billing. Client complaints. Nothing huge, but enough to raise flags. The ethics committee has been looking into it for about 6 weeks. And Jessica's name keeps coming up. Inflated hours, client meetings that didn't happen, hotel stays for business trips she didn't take. Richard looked at me steadily. We're talking about possible fraud, Walter. At minimum, we're talking about a serious ethics violation. I sat down slowly. How serious? Serious enough that she could be disbarred. We're still investigating, but it's not looking good. I'm telling you because of what I just saw out there. Because your grandchildren are involved. Because Michael is going to need support when this comes out. When? The ethics committee meets next week to review the final report. If they vote to recommend termination and referral to the Bar Association. Richard shrugged. It'll be done. I sat in his old office, my old office, and thought about Jessica's Cartier watch, the Tesla, the $2 million house, the orchids in the foyer that cost more than my grandchildren's art club. She's been living beyond her means, I said. Way beyond. Michael makes good money, but not enough for their lifestyle. We think she's been padding her billable hours to make bonus targets. She hit every bonus benchmark last year. Now we know why. Does Michael know? Not yet. We'll have to tell him before it's official. I nodded slowly. I'd like to be there when you do. Richard looked at me for a long moment. Of course. We sat in silence for a while, looking out at the city. Finally, Richard said, For what it's worth, Walter, I'm glad you came today. Not because of the Jessica situation, but because we miss you here. The firm misses you. You should come by more often. Maybe I will. When I went back to the conference room, the family day was breaking up. Jessica was nowhere to be seen. Michael stood with Sophie and Noah, his face carefully blank in the way it got when he was processing something difficult. Dad, he said when he saw me, we need to talk. I know. Jessica's in the bathroom. She's pretty upset. I imagine she is. Michael's jaw tightened. She didn't know, Dad. You never told us. You just said you'd retired from your practice. You never said, would it have mattered? Of course it would have mattered. Why? Why would it have mattered, Michael? I kept my voice gentle. Should Jessica have been kinder to me because I founded a law firm? Should she have let the kids do art club if she'd known I was wealthy once? Should respect be contingent on net worth? Michael opened his mouth, then closed it. Sophie was watching us with wide eyes. She's embarrassed, Michael finally said. She made assumptions and now she feels stupid. She should feel stupid, but not because she got my background wrong, because she treated me like I didn't matter, because she's been teaching your children that worth is measured in money and status, because she turned me away at your door like I was selling something. Dad, Michael. I took his shoulders. I need you to listen to me. In about a week, Jessica is going to have a very bad day. The firm is investigating her billing practices. It's serious. And when that happens, your children are going to need you to be strong, to be the father I know you can be. Michael's face went slack. What are you talking about? Talk to Richard Crawford. He'll explain. But Michael, when it happens, don't let pride keep you from asking for help. Not from me, not from your sister, not from anyone. Your kids need you. I don't understand. You will. Jessica emerged from the restroom, her makeup repaired but her eyes red. She looked at me and seemed to crumple slightly. Walter, I need to apologize. I didn't realize. I know. I've been awful to you. I was showing off, and I didn't. I'm sorry. I looked at her for a long moment. She looked young suddenly, despite the expensive suit and the perfect hair. Young and scared, and in over her head. Jessica, I don't need an apology for not recognizing me. I need you to be better to my son and my grandchildren. Can you do that? She nodded, tears spilling over. Then we're fine. But we weren't fine. Not really. The ethics committee met the following Thursday. Richard called me the night before to give me the news. The vote was unanimous. Jessica would be terminated effective immediately, and the case would be referred to the Massachusetts Board of Bar Overseers for disciplinary action. Michael's coming in tomorrow at 9, Richard said. I thought you should know. Thank you, Richard. Walter? I'm sorry it came to this. So am I. I called Jennifer that night, filled her in. My daughter, practical and fierce like her mother, listened quietly. Does Michael know you know? Not yet. Do you want me to go up there? Not yet. Let me see how he handles it first. Dad, are you okay? I'm fine, honey. You're always fine. A pause. Mom would have been proud of you, you know, for not throwing it in Jessica's face, for trying to help. Your mother would have throat-punched her at the family day. Jennifer laughed, and it eased something in my chest. Michael called me at 10:30 Friday morning. I could hear crying in the background, Jessica, breaking down. Dad, can you come over, please? I'm on my way. The house in Wellesley was chaos when I arrived. Jessica sat on the couch, sobbing. Michael paced. Sophie and Noah had been sent to their rooms, but I could see Sophie peeking around the corner of the stairs. They fired her, Michael said without preamble. Ethics violation. Billing fraud. They're referring her to the bar. She could be disbarred, Dad. She could face criminal charges. I know. He stopped pacing. You know? Richard told me last week. Last week? And you didn't. He made a sound between a laugh and a sob. Of course. At the family day. That's why you were meeting with him. He thought I should know. Did you know then? When she was introducing you to everyone? Did you already know she was being investigated? Yes. Michael sat down heavily. God, she was so awful to you, and you just took it. What else would I do? Jessica looked up from the couch, her face blotchy. You could have warned me. You could have told me I was about to lose everything. Would you have listened? She stared at me, then started crying again. I looked at my son. Michael, what's your financial situation? Bad. The mortgage is underwater. We bought at the peak. Jessica's salary was 2/3 of our income. We have credit card debt, car payments. I don't know how we're going to. He put his head in his hands. You're going to sell the house, I said calmly. You're going to downsize to something you can afford on your salary. You're going to sell the Tesla and the BMW and buy practical cars. You're going to cut up the credit cards and live within your means. We can't sell the house. We'll lose money. You'll lose more if you try to hang on to it. Pride is expensive, Michael. Your mother and I learned that early. We lived in a tiny apartment for the first 5 years of our marriage while I built the practice. We drove used cars until we were 40. We were happy. We're not you and Mom. No, but you could try. Jessica stood up abruptly. I can't do this. I can't. I built my entire career. Everything I worked for. And now, she looked at me with something like hatred. You could help us. You founded the firm. You could talk to them. I could what? Ask them to overlook fraud? Ask them to ignore ethics violations? Jessica, you stole from clients. You lied about your work. There's no fixing that. It wasn't stealing. I worked hard. I inflated some hours. Everyone does it. No, I said quietly. Everyone doesn't do it. Most lawyers are honest. Most people are honest, and the ones who aren't don't get to keep practicing law. She sank back down, the fight going out of her. I stayed with them for 3 hours, helped Michael start making a list of what needed to be done, called a realtor friend to get the house listed, called another friend who did bankruptcy law to get Jessica set up with a consultation, made grilled cheese sandwiches for Sophie and Noah, and sat with them in their playroom while their parents fought downstairs. "Is Mommy in trouble?" Sophie asked quietly. "Yes, sweetheart, but it's going to be okay." "Is it because of money?" I looked at her, this 6-year-old with her 2 wise eyes. "It's because your mommy made some bad choices. But people can learn from bad choices. And your daddy is going to take care of you. And you. And me." Noah climbed into my lap. "I don't like the big house anyway. It's too big." Sophie nodded. "Can we do art club again? In the new place?" "Absolutely." That night, Michael called me after the kids were in bed. "Dad, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry I let Jessica treat you like that. I'm sorry I asked you to be patient when I should have been demanding she be better. I know, son. How do we come back from this? One day at a time. One honest choice at a time. You show your kids that setbacks aren't the end, that dignity doesn't come from money or titles, that family shows up for each other even when it's hard. I don't know if Jessica and I are going to make it through this. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, but either way, you're going to be okay. The kids are going to be okay. How do you know? Because you're a good man, Michael. You just forgot that for a while. The next 6 months were hard. The house sold at a loss. Jessica was disbarred. Michael filed for divorce 3 months in, citing irreconcilable differences. Jessica fought it initially, but her lawyer convinced her she had no leverage. The custody arrangement gave Michael primary custody, with Jessica having supervised visitation until she completed counseling. They moved into a modest 3-bedroom townhouse in Arlington. Michael bought a used Subaru. Sophie started art club at the community center. Noah joined T-ball. I helped where I could, paid for the kids' activities, took them on weekends so Michael could work, showed up for dinner every Thursday. Jessica got a job as a compliance officer at a mid-size company. Not prestigious, not high-paying, but honest. She started therapy, started being civil to me, then apologetic, then slowly almost kind. 8 months after the family day, I got a call from Richard Crawford. "Walter, the partners have been talking. We'd like to propose something." "Oh?" "The firm has grown significantly. We need someone to oversee ethics and professional responsibility. Someone who understands the culture we want to maintain. Someone who built that culture." He paused. "It would be part-time, 20 hours a week. Enough to keep you busy but not overwhelm you. And it would send a message to every attorney here about what we value." "I'm 65, Richard. I know. We're not asking for another 30 years. Just a few years. To help us rebuild the ethical foundation. To remind people what law is supposed to be about." I looked out my apartment window at the Charles River. "Can I think about it?" "Of course." I called Jennifer. "They want me to come back part-time. Do you want to?" "I don't know. I retired. I was done." "Were you? Or were you just tired?" I thought about that. About the last 5 years. About the apartment that felt empty after Sarah died. About the grandchildren I wanted to see more of. About the satisfaction of building something that mattered. Maybe I was just tired. "Then rest up, Dad. And if you want to go back, go back." I started the following month. 20 hours a week, teaching young attorneys about ethics and professionalism, reviewing billing practices, mentoring associates who needed guidance. Sophie and Noah started coming to the office on Saturdays sometimes, doing homework in the law library while I worked. I'd take them to lunch after, and we'd talk about their week, their friends, their dreams. One Saturday, 6 months into my return, Sophie looked up from her drawing and said, "Grandpa, did you know you were famous when Mommy was being mean to you?" "I wasn't famous, sweetheart, but you started the law firm. That's like being famous." "Maybe a little bit." "Why didn't you tell her?" I set down the ethics opinion I was reading. Because if I had to tell her who I was to get her to be kind, then her kindness wouldn't mean anything. People should be kind because it's right, not because they think they'll get something out of it. Sophie thought about this. Is that why you gave away your money? So you'd know who was really nice to you? I smiled. That's part of it. But mostly because your grandmother and I had more than we needed, and there were people who needed it more. Like scholarships for law school? Exactly like that. Noah, who'd been coloring quietly, looked up. Did Mommy learn to be nicer? She's trying. Learning is a process, buddy. Sometimes people have to lose things before they understand what matters. Like when I lost my favorite truck and cried? Exactly like that. A year after the family day, Jessica called me. Not Michael, Jessica herself. Walter, it's Jessica. Do you have a minute? Of course. I wanted to tell you that I've been offered a position at a nonprofit, legal aid society. It's a huge pay cut, but I think I want to do it. But I wanted to ask you first if you thought that was appropriate. Given my record. I was quiet for a moment. What do you think? I think people deserve second chances. I think I could do good work helping people who can't afford lawyers. But I don't want to be selfish. I don't want to take a position from someone more deserving. Jessica, are you asking my permission or my advice? Both, I guess. Then here's my advice. Take the job. Do good work. Be honest. Help people. Show your children what redemption looks like. And don't ever forget how you got there. I won't. Walter? Yes? Thank you for not giving up on us, on me. I know I didn't deserve it. Nobody deserves grace, Jessica. That's what makes it grace. 2 years after the family day, Sophie won an art contest at school. The whole family came to the ceremony. Michael, Jessica, Jennifer, me. We sat together in the elementary school auditorium, watching Sophie beam as she accepted her ribbon. Afterward, we went out for pizza. Jessica and Michael weren't back together. I didn't think they would be, but they were friendly, cooperative, focused on the kids. Noah got sauce all over his face. Sophie showed us her ribbon 40 times. Jessica laughed at something Jennifer said. Michael caught my eye across the table and smiled. On the way out, Sophie grabbed my hand. Grandpa? Yes, sweetheart? I'm glad you came to Mommy's office that day, even though it was scary. Why's that? Because if you hadn't, everything might still be bad. But now it's better. I looked at her. This wise little girl with paint under her fingernails and dreams in her eyes. You're right, I said. It is better. She skipped ahead to catch up with her brother, and I stood there in the parking lot of a pizza place in Arlington, Massachusetts, watching my family pile into 2 modest cars. No Mercedes, no Tesla, no $2 million house. But Sophie was in art club. Noah played t-ball. Michael slept better at night. Jessica was learning to help instead of hurt. And I got to see my grandchildren every week. I'd built a lot of things in my life. A law firm, a marriage, a career. But this messy, humble, honest life, we were all rebuilding together. This felt like the most important thing I'd ever helped create. Sometimes people need to see you at your lowest before they can appreciate you at your best. Sometimes they need to lose everything before they understand what matters. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the space to fall and the grace to get back up. I got in my old Honda Civic and drove home to my modest apartment, and I was happy, not because I'd proven anything, not because I'd gotten revenge, but because my family was healing. My grandchildren were thriving, and I'd learned that the truest measure of a person isn't what they have or what they've lost. It's what they do with whatever comes next. And we were all doing pretty well with that.